Hello everybody, my name is Masai Ko, Sales Engineer with ARCHIBUS, here today to show you our Revit integration. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through this very scaled down 3-floor office building. We're only going to deal with actually one floor and a portion of that floor. My goal today is just to show you the many options as far as getting this data, the extensive amount of data that can reside in a Revit model out of that Revit model and into ARCHIBUS. And in fact, we're even going to talk about the fact that not all of this data has to reside in this Revit model. For some of the dealings that we've had initially here, it's becoming more and more apparent that some of this data never actually makes it into the model, or if it did, could overload the size of the model and make it unusable. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. As you can see, we do have our 3-floor office building. We're going to refer to it as the Boston office building. And the floor that we're going to deal with specifically is the first floor. You'll notice that I do have a level 1 FM floor. Just for the purposes of this demonstration, I've just scaled down what's on this floor just a little bit. Again, just to keep the model moving smoothly, quick, and make it a very concise demo. So what we're going to do, I've already taken a few liberties here just for the setup of this demo. I've already defined the properties of this building. I've defined the title, and I've already linked the building and the floor to records in the database. So as of right now, because these fields are grayed out, this level of this building is actually attached to the model. Now you'll notice, or to the ARCHIBUS database. You'll notice if I go up to the second floor and we take a look at that level, and I go and look at those same properties, you'll notice that this has not been attached to the database yet. So I could go in and I could go ahead and attach that to the Boston office building in the second floor if those records exist, or whatever the building code and floor might be. We're not going to do that. We're going to jump back down to that first floor. Another thing that I've already done is I've already added properties. Now what added properties does is if I'm on this room element here, if we scroll down to the bottom, what you'll notice is this is already numbered and it does already have a name. But what you'll also notice is there are a few additional fields that have been defined below. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sync up this database very quickly, just to make sure that we have the most up-to-date data. It won't take very long, as you'll notice. What this does is it actually takes the information from the database and makes sure it's up to date in the model itself. So there is the information that we have in this database. What I'm going to do now, okay, we've numbered these rooms over here on the left side of this floor. We also have a few multifunction printers, some pieces of furniture. What we're going to do now is we're going to attach information to these records in the database. So what we're going to do is we're going to very quickly go into the Smart Client, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at these rooms. We're going to look at the rooms table and look at the rooms that, because we've numbered them, there is a record that's been pushed into that database. So we're going to go ahead to that Boston office building. There are our rooms. You'll see we have a few workstations and then the other rooms in that building. We also notice that there's no other data. There's no room standard. There's no room category. There's no room type. No division or department has been assigned, and there's no room use that's been defined for any of these yet. And I say yet. We're going to go ahead and we're going to build this data, and we're going to do it using a few different methods. The first method is to use this edit data. Now, I don't really want to do a single room at a time. I have 4 offices that we're going to build. So what I can do instead is I can go ahead and I can grab all of those office room elements, and instead of edit data, I'm going to edit data multiple. Now you'll notice that these are all office A, personnel, office. They're not prorated, and the room area does vary, and yet no division or department is assigned to these rooms. So I'm just simply going to step in here very quickly, select our office A, go ahead, select our personnel area, and then go ahead and select our office. And I'm going to make a save for all those rooms. And I've now updated those rooms. Now we have a few other additional rooms here, such as this room right here, which is our storage area. We want to make sure that we define our storage area. So we want to first make sure we have the correct room standard. So we're going to take our storage closet, the room category, it's storage, and then we want to use general storage for this. So we're going to go ahead and again, we're going to save that data. Now we have our server room, which happens to sit right here. And one of the things I'm going to do before I step off of that storage room is we're going to go back in and edit data, and we're just going to make sure we prorate that for the floor to make sure that it's shared as it should be. Then we have our server room, so we're going to go ahead, we're going to do our edit data. Again, we're going to choose our room standard, which is going to be a telecom room. We're then going to use our room category, which is support, and then our room type, which is going to be serve for our server room. And again, this room is also going to be shared simply by this floor. We have a server room on each floor. So we're going to go ahead and save that information, and then we have a few other rooms that we still need to define data for. But we're not going to do that here in the Revit model. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to jump into that smart client, we're going to refresh so that we can see the updated data that we've already pushed into the database. And what we're going to do is we're going to add some more. These workstations here, 109A through E, we know that these are workstations, so I want to go ahead and define that information. I want to take that workstation, we're going to assign a personnel space, and then we're also going to assign a workstation type. I'm going to give it the description. Now what I can do is I can actually, because I'm in the smart client, I can copy and I can paste this information to make sure it's copied and very quickly populate all of these fields. Now I've added this information in the smart client. We'll go ahead and refresh just to make sure all that data is up to date. And then what I can do is I can jump back into that Revit model and I can go into those workstations and we can pull up one of those room elements and I can go in, I can edit data. Notice that it is a workstation A, personnel workstation. That information has already been passed in to the Revit model. It's a bi-directional link, so I already have that data available to me. Just to show you the exchange of that, let's go ahead and take this conference room. We'll go in and edit data. We're going to add our room standard to it. So we're going to make sure that this is a conference room. Our room category, again, it's a support space. It's going to be a conference room. And we're going to share it by floor. We'll go ahead and save that information. Now, what happens if this changes in the future? Do I want to come into this Revit model and make that change? Possibly not. Instead, what I could do is if this was no longer a conference room, I could go in and I can change this to whatever it might be. Maybe this becomes a computer room. Maybe this becomes a library or some kind of a training or classroom. So let's go ahead and make that a training room. We'll refresh the data just to make sure it's fine. Step back into the model and edit data, and you'll notice that it's still a conference room, but that training room has now been assigned to it. So that's how you can make these bi-directional changes and see that exchange of data. We're going to go ahead and set that back to a conference room. And now what we're going to do is we've created this floor plan, we've updated the information, we're going to go ahead and we're going to publish this, and we're going to explore our third venue for exchanging data to and from the Revit model and the ARCHIBUS database. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to save this, save our changes to this model very quickly, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to publish those enterprise graphics. Now this is going to create a flash representation here within Web Central. I'm simply going to log into Web Central, navigate to Space Planning and Management, find my floor plan, and what I need to do is I need to assign the rest of the categories and types to that space. So we're going to go ahead and do that using the flash representation of that floor plan here within Web Central. Again, very light file, loads very quickly, and I'm able to interact with it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up that floor plan, and I can see that I have a few rooms that have yet to be defined. One of those is the area surrounding those workstations, that open office space. So I'm going to go ahead and make a save there. I also have my reception room, which has yet to be defined. So we're going to choose reception, go ahead and assign that reception room, and then we also have a copy room here, which has yet to be defined. So we'll go ahead and we'll choose that copy room, and we'll make that save. And there is the left side of our floor plan. We've made some additional changes here in Web Central. Additionally, if I want to step in and assign divisions and departments to those rooms, I can go ahead and again get that done very quickly here within Web Central, instead of having to have somebody who may never have set foot in a Revit model, or if I'm using a very large Revit model, doesn't want to take the time to go in and navigate around that floor plan using that Revit model. So we're going to go ahead and take facilities construction. We're going to give them those 2 offices and those 3 cubes. We're going to save. We're going to take facilities real estate management, and they're going to get the rest of this space. And we're going to go ahead and save that information. Now remember, none of these rooms are owned by anybody. These are all common rooms that we have here. The open floor plan, again, we could save that, or what we could do is give that to one of the 2 groups if we wanted to. We'll just leave it as is for now. So there we have our floor plan. We've basically, in a very short period of time, set up our space. Now let's go back into the smart client. Let's refresh this information, and we can see all of the additional pieces of data that we've populated on those rooms. Now we notice that we're missing a few standards. So again, because I'm here, I know that this is a reception room, so I can go ahead and use that data integrity to look up and add the reception area to the standard. Again, a copy room. We know that that could be a file room, it could be a mail room, but instead what we'll do is we'll give it an other. And then we also know that our personnel open floor plan space. We want to give that a type 2, and we're just going to call that open. So we go ahead and save that data. Now there is an additional piece to this which we're going to start moving over towards, and that is the ability to bring in through a connector the additional information that you're looking for. We want to make sure that we can find additional information on rooms, wall finish, floor finish, whatever the case may be. We want to make sure for pieces of equipment we have manufacturer data and things like that. So this is exactly where this spreadsheet comes into play. We're able to map an input connector to this to be able to bring that in, to be able to make sure we're exchanging this data accurately. Now you notice these room types of workstation. I do want to point those out because we're actually going to change the room type of a few rooms. And we're going to update the description in some of those rooms. Also, we have some equipment standards, we have some equipment components, we have some furniture standards, and then we have some furniture components. Now just to show you what we're talking about here, before we get into any of this, let's go ahead and reset this and take a quick look into the equipment table just to verify that there is in fact no data here right now. We're going to go ahead and find the building code, and we want to narrow down to that Boston office. You'll notice that there is no Boston office, so I don't have any records in the equipment table yet for this. I'm going to bring up this favorites that we've already created. We're going to discard what we're looking at now, and I'm going to bring up that Boston EQ, and you'll notice that there's no records, but we're going to change that. Let's go back into our drawing, and for equipment, let's take this multifunction printer right here, and we're going to go back to our add-ins tab, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to number this piece of equipment. So we'll go ahead, it's a piece of equipment. Notice that it recognizes the asset type because of the family that it belongs to, and we know we want a prefix here. So we're going to say AMFP, and then the number is going to be 001, 3 digits in increments of 1. So we're going to go ahead and number that one. And actually I do just want to change that number very quickly. I just want to make sure it matches up with the spreadsheet that we're going to bring in. So that's actually going to be number 2. And then we're going to drop down here, and we're actually going to choose this. And we're going to go ahead, we can either number or we can edit data. And instead of MFP1, we're going to go ahead and leave that as is. And we might choose the equipment standard at this point in time if we knew what it was. We don't have this equipment standard loaded in here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign it to a division and department. So again, we're dealing with facilities, and we know that we have real estate management down there, so I'm going to go ahead and save that data. So I have number 1 and I have AMFP number 2. Those are my pieces of equipment. What about pieces of furniture? So let's go ahead up here, let's take our desk, our add-in. You'll notice that it's already numbered for us. Again, just to save time, I've already done some of this. So I have AOD01, I have AOD02. So let's go ahead, we're going to edit data. Again, remember that these up here are assigned to specific rooms. So this is room 100, we'll save that. We have an ergonomic chair. Again, let's go in, edit data, we'll assign that to room 100. And then we have 2 common chairs. So let's select both of those at the same time, add-ins, edit data multiple, and we'll make sure that those in fact sit in room 100. And we're going to do the same thing for the furniture over here, and instead of selecting one at a time, we're just going to go ahead and select all of them all at once, edit data multiple, and make sure that in fact they're all in room 100. And we're going to save that information. Now I've added a few pieces of furniture, I've added a few pieces of equipment. What I want to do is I want to go into that database, refresh that data. We'll notice that we have AMFP001. We want to go back into that Revit model, make sure that 002 gets in there. So we want to edit that data, and it is in room 109. We know that for a fact. It's not in room 100. It is in fact in room 109. We'll go ahead and we'll make that save and push that data into that database. We'll make that refresh, and we have that record. Let's just call that up very quickly. 0, 0, 2. We'll update that existing value, and we'll hit OK. Now again, we should see that new record in the database, and there it is. Now notice that none of these have equipment standards. There's no additional information defined that hasn't been provided by us already. Again, we can go into a different table. Let's go into the tagged asset table and see if we have any tagged furniture that's been defined in this building. Again, we want to filter down to that Boston office building. So use our building code to dynamically filter, and this time we do have the Boston office building, and there have already been a few pieces of furniture defined. Those 2 desks, the 2 ergonomic chairs, and the 4 chairs themselves. But notice again, there's no additional data that's been defined here. Now this is where this connector tool comes in. We do have those same desks, the chairs, and the ergonomic chairs that have been defined. We also have some shelves and some lateral files that are in the storage room, room 102. We want to make sure that we bring that information as well. And we have some additional information, serial numbers, installation date, the tag number. If we had a barcode, we could populate that here. And remember, this all could be coming from the contractor. So what we want to do is we just want to make sure that this spreadsheet's up to date. Go ahead and save it. And what we're going to do is we're going to jump into Web Central, and we're going to go into our connectors, and we're going to fire off this connector that I've built that will run all of those tabs all in one connector. So we're going to go ahead to execute connectors. And I don't want to give you a session on what the connectors are. It's just simply an import tool. I've built all of these connectors. I've put them into one import controller, and we're going to go ahead and run that feed. And we're going to watch as it processes, and it finishes all the records, and it imported everything, and it's been completed. Now what does that mean for us? Well, if we go back into that database, into our smart client, there's our furniture codes. But let's go ahead and refresh this data. Let's update it. We'll see that there's a lot more information that's now been populated here. And let's actually go ahead and move some of this around. I don't want to see some of this information. What I do want to see is I do want to see the furniture code. I do want to see the room code. I want to see the furniture standard. So let's go ahead and move that furniture standard up just a little bit here. We'll go ahead and hit OK, and we see that those furniture standards that we saw are also there. What was another field that we had? Install date. We made sure that we had install date into we had install date, we had serial number, we had a few different pieces of information that we want to be able to display, and we can bring all those on and display all those pieces of information. So the furniture use is there. We also have the serial numbers have been populated, and install date is there as well. So we've been able to also set up a tool that allows us to, whether that information is in the Revit model and we export it out to a spreadsheet or a COBE file or an IFC file, or if we have this information submitted to us in a proper format, which is to populate a spreadsheet that we've stood up for our contractors, we're able to identify any field in the database, be able to have them populate that data for us as they're building this building, input this data into ARCHIBUS, and be able to go ahead, create our SLAs, go ahead and stand up our on-demand work, go ahead and start to schedule preventive maintenance, assign these pieces of equipment to people, things like that. And notice, additional pieces of additional assets that we can't even see have been brought on, including 3 air handlers in that building which happen to sit on the roof. So there really is a lot of power here as far as being able to work with this Revit model. And again, this is a very scaled down version, but whether you're dealing with those air handlers, you're dealing with HVAC systems such as vents and pipes and ducts and things like that, mechanical systems, water systems, whatever the case may be, being able to get as much of this information out of this very data-friendly, data-heavy Revit model and pushing it over into the ARCHIBUS database is of nothing but value. Having that information faster, sooner, lowering your commission time, being able to stand up processes before anybody even occupies the building, and proactively maintaining that facility instead of reactively for the first initial time frame, whether it be 6 months, a year, even 2 years, is of nothing but benefit to extend the life cycle of that facility. So thank you very much for joining. I hope you enjoyed this quick little tour into our Revit integration. Again, my name is Masai Ko from ARCHIBUS, and take care.